Hello everyone, good evening. So, can anyone hear me? Audible po ba? Okay, thank you. So, I've posted last night a survey no dun sa Google. So, hindi naman siya compulsory no, but um if you want to help no a graduating vet student, so kindly answer the survey no. Ayun 'no. So it's about, canine derofilariasis or heartworm. So anyway 'no, so our topic for today is, fracture support. So this is a very important, aspect in the management of orthopedic injuries 'no. So it has 3 main benefits. Number 1 is to reduce further soft tissue injury. So when you have fractures, no, you would have sharp bone fragments that can damage the surrounding soft tissues. For example, the muscles, blood vessels, or nerves. No? So by immobilizing the fractured limb, you can prevent excessive movement and reduce the risk of additional soft tissue trauma or injury. So, immobilization can also help control inflammation as well as swelling, so thus creating a favorable environment for tissue healing. So, another main benefit would be increased patient comfort. When you stabilize a fracture, you reduce the pain by minimizing the movement of the broken bone fragments. And that improves the patient's comfort and also allows the patient to rest better, which is essential for healing. Number three, okay, main benefit would be to provide temporary or primary stabilization. When we say temporary stabilization, external splints no, or bandages, which we will explore later on, they are used as temporary measures to stabilize fractures before a definitive surgical treatment. So, for example, while waiting for surgery or during transportation of the patient, these splints or bandages can provide a temporary stabilization. When you say primary stabilization, okay, for example, for simple fractures wherein you have bones that are not displaced, no, they can heal successfully or they may heal successfully just with external support. Okay? So in those cases, external splints are considered as primary methods of stabilization. Okay? So before we go to the examples, so let's just first explore the layers of a bandage no, and the order of application. Okay, let me just reshare the presentation to include the sound. Please tell me no if merong audio.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining me and looking at this video. My goal here is to help
Audible po yung video. Okay, thank you.
decrease bandage associated problems in small animal practice. I have seen many patients present to our surgical practice with complications related to poorly made bandages or bandages that simply are not fulfilling their intended function. So let's look at some bandaging principles from which you should never stray. So you might remember that a bandage is made of a primary, secondary, and tertiary layers, and that's really nice, but if you can't remember which one the cast padding is versus the cling, is it primary or secondary? It doesn't really help you to create a good bandage. So we are just going to call the different bandage layers by their function. We're going to name them by what they're according to do, and that should help you remember their order. The one thing you need to remember is you can never vary their order. You can maybe omit the contact layer. You can add a lot of padding and make your padding layer really thick, but you cannot change the order of which you apply the materials. Let's have a closer look at this. The first layer of the bandage is the contact layer, and that is the layer that goes directly on the wound or incision. Now, if you're bandaging for an orthopedic reason and you
Na, dili
have
na
no
namin
wound
magkuhan,
or
mute naman
incision,
ka.
then you don't have a
Ah.
contact layer. You just omit this layer. The contact layer will be whatever you need it to be depending on the stage in which your wound healing progress is occurring. It should usually be non-adherent. It often will be therapeutic, such as honey or maybe silver sulfadiazine or whatever your product of choice that you might like to apply on.
So just a side comment, no. So the honey that it's referring to, no, is not the food grade honey, no. So this type of honey is specifically used for wounds, no. Iba yung ano siya for medical purposes talaga siya, no. And it has not only antibacterial but it may also have anti-inflammatory properties.
To wounds, and you might just put that on a piece of gauze. You might just use a Telfa pad or one of those petroleum jelly infiltrated gauze pads. All of these are contact layers. Contact layers, just this layer on itself, is a whole seminar topic on its own, and it belongs in the wound management lecture series, not just bandaging, all right? But the contact layer you apply when you have a wound or incision. The next layer you're going to use is your padding layer. And the padding can be the cast padding, such as the picture here, so convenient and easy to apply. You can also use that big cotton padding that you can buy. You've probably seen it used for Robert Jones bandaging. That's a little more cumbersome to manage, but will still do a good job. The type of bandaging you want to apply will padding you need. So the more immobilization you want to create, the more padding you need. If your patient still has a lot of swelling in the leg and you really want to decrease the swelling, you may want to apply a bit more padding so you can compress more with the next layer. All right, so depending on what you want to do will dictate how much padding you're going to want to apply onto your bandage. Your next layer is your cling bandage material. It's going to serve to compress the cast padding that you've just applied, and it is going to give shape to the bandage. The important thing is to have a sufficient amount of tension when you apply this cling layer. Not enough tension is going to create a sloppy bandage that's going to tend to fall down the leg and not fulfill the function that you need your bandage to fulfill. Too much tension might make the bandage uncomfortable to the patient and it can decrease the blood flow to the area. So you do have to have good monitoring. You have to be patient with yourself. It takes a bit of practice to get the tension right. Mostly we tend to be a little bit timid and not apply enough tension. If you have a lot of padding in that layer below the cling layer, then you can apply a lot of tension. Not a lot of padding, apply less tension. Your final layer, it's going to be that self-adhesive, cohesive wrap style material, such as we have Vet Wrap here, but Coban is another brand that we're familiar with. So whatever brand you use, this layer is going to serve to protect your bandage. It's going to keep your bandage a little cleaner. It's going to help the cling maintain its shape. And it's also going to offer some water resistance properties for your bandage. Not waterproof, let's make that clear, but water resistance, which is just going to help this bandage go a little bit further. So those are the basic layers of the bandage. But wait, what if you want to add a splint because you really want to immobilize an area? Maybe you have a fracture or a joint you want to immobilize. The splint should always go between your compressive layer and your protective layer. So between your cling and your vet wrap. And make sure you secure your splint to the bandage either with tape. Some people will actually use a layer of cling to support it in place. There's always more than one way to do things. But this is where the splint goes. It goes between the cling and the vet wrap. The purpose of your bandage is going to help dictate how much emphasis you need to put on the various layers. Their order will never change, but the emphasis of each layer might be altered depending on the reason for your bandage. For instance, if you have an orthopedic issue, got a patient with a bit of a carpal sprain, you may want to up your cast padding layer, add a little bit more so that you have more support in the carpal area for that patient. Now, if you've got a dog that has a big wound on its limb and your bandage may want to be focused more on the contact layer, and your contact layer will likely vary depending on the stage of wound healing that that wound is in at that particular bandage change. Keep that in mind and make the appropriate adjustments as necessary. Thanks for listening. And please, 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 if you have found this information helpful, just hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Have an amazing day.
Okay, to check your attendance, okay, kindly type in the chat box your answer. So based on the video, now what's the other name for the compressive layer? Okay, another name for the compressive layer. So I will wait for your answers in the chat box. Okay? So as mentioned in the video, no, you can also include splints in your bandage. No, they are very important in providing immobilization and support for either fractures, joint injuries, or soft tissue trauma. No, so they can be used as temporary or primary treatment. Okay, so depending on the proper application and diligent monitoring, they can be effective tools, no, in preventing complications, in preventing discomfort for the patient, etc. Okay, so just type your answers in the chat box. No, what's the other name for the compressive layer? Okay, so for the others, please type your answers sa chat box. No, another name for the compressive layer. Okay. So with regards to the proper application of splints, no, so they must be able to immobilize the joints that are above and below the fracture site. So for example, if the fracture is here at this level, so the joint above and below that fracture site should be immobilized. Now that's to minimize movement and also to promote proper bone alignment. As mentioned in the video, no, there should also be, for example, a cotton no, or another synthetic padding to protect the skin and underlying tissues from pressure. Okay, and if the bandage or the splint is not too tight, okay, then it may just loosen, no. But if it's too tight, okay, it can compromise blood flow. Okay? So meron ding compressive layer, no? Like anything, no, any material, okay, that can be molded to the shape of the limb, no, for optimal support. So as much as possible, no, the limb should be properly positioned during application, okay, lalong-lalo na yung sa may fracture area, no, and for the monitoring, no, so it's important to detect complications early. So they must be checked daily for signs of discharge, any changes in the color of the skin, no, which can indicate a compromised circulation. If the skin has signs of swelling, no, or if there is abnormal odor no, emanating from the splint. So in hospitalized patients, no, or in confined patients in clinics, splints are usually checked multiple times every day. No? And then for outpatients, no, it's important that you educate no, the owner on how they can check for these abnormalities, no, these signs, and of course what to check. Okay, so we have here some other complications. No, for minor, aside from swelling, we have the splint slippage. No, the splint can shift out of position due to improper fit or maybe due to the excessive movement of the animal. Okay, thus it's also important that along with the um, proper molding and securing of the splint, no, the animal's activity should also be limited. Skin abrasions, okay? So this may be because of inadequate padding, okay, or cotton layer, okay, that led to more pressure from the splint, no, leading to skin abrasions. And for more serious complications, we have here fracture non-union. Okay, so non-union occurs when the fractured bone fails to heal properly because of insufficient stabilization, or if there is improper blood supply, because blood supply is important for bone healing, or maybe because of, again, excessive movement of the animal. Ischemic necrosis, if the spleen is too tight, no, it can restrict blood flow, causing tissue death or ischemic necrosis. No, without prompt intervention, this can progress to severe tissue damage. No, and in those severe cases, no, if there's already irreversible tissue death or ischemic necrosis, you may need to amputate the affected limb, no? So, ganun. A simple fracture, pwede siyang mag-lead to amputation, maybe because of the improper placement of the spleen. Okay? So prevention again is to perform daily checks to assess for swelling, skin irritation, proper positioning, and to educate pet owners on the importance of monitoring their pets, for these signs. Okay, and also to limit their pets' activity, to promote healing. So we have some common examples, of temporary supports in veterinary orthopedics, like the Robert Jones bandage. This is a widely used temporary support, that provides substantial immobilization. So as you can see here, no, it's the first picture, no, the yellow one. Okay, it is it looks bulky, no, and it's actually one of the limitations of this type of bandage. It's bulky, no, it's not suitable for long-term use, okay, and incorrect application of this, no, can lead to impaired circulation. Okay, but the advantage is that it can control swelling through compression. It's simple, no, and cost effective. So the materials are readily available. No, you can even practice this with your own animals. So for the layers of the Robert Jones bandage, no, it's the same as the one mentioned earlier. So there's a layer of cotton, okay, or cotton roll, okay, to provide cushioning and compression. There is a gauze bandage, no, that is wrapped around the cotton layer to compress the soft tissue. And then there's a protective outer layer, a like elastic bandage such as vet wrap, no, to hold the inner layers in place and to provide additional compression. No? So mamaya, no, we'll see how a Robert Jones bandage, okay, is applied. And then we also have lighter bandages, okay, like spoon splints. No? So the second picture is an example of a spoon splint. So it's called as such because of its shape, no, spoon-shaped design. It cradles the limb, the affected limb, and provides rigid support. So they are typically made of either metal, no, or plastic. Thus, these are lightweight, and they're also durable. Okay, so they are commonly used for fractures or dislocations in the areas of the radius ulna, so the tibia fibula, or the metacarpal and metatarsals. So they have the same layers, so with the addition of this splint, no, spoon splint. Okay, and regardless of the type of the temporary support, the monitoring for complications is still important. So when we say coaptation, okay, this refers to the external support that are used to stabilize fractures and injuries. So we have different types of coaptation depending on the location of the fracture. So when you have fractures below the elbow or the stifle joint, no, so for the forelimb, below the elbow, okay, for the radius or for the ulna, for the metacarpals or the phalanges, so, or for the hind limbs, okay, for below the stifle, so tibia, fibula, metatarsals, and the phalanges, no, you can stabilize them using Robert Jones bandage or the um, spoon splint. Okay? So yung either of the two, no, can be used. But for fractures above the elbow or the stifle joint, so meaning the humerus and the scapula for the forelimb or for the hind area, no, the femur and the pelvic bone, okay, greater challenges challenging, no, yung coaptation for those areas. Okay, thus you may need a spica splint. No? So in this picture, okay, this is a spica splint. So it's basically a similar, no, to the splints mentioned earlier, but okay, it extends across the body. So um for the forelimb, okay, it crosses above the shoulder. Okay, and for the hind, okay, it crosses above the hip. Okay, so it immobilizes the limb by restricting movement at the fracture site, no, for example, at the scapula. Okay, and it also immobilizes the adjacent joints. Okay, so it has the same layers, okay, but you need more materials for this, no, since it's a larger splint. Okay, so again, for fractures of the humerus, scapula, and femur, for hip dislocation or shoulder dislocation, or also soft tissue injuries that involve the upper limb. Okay? So mas bulky lang siya, no? It's more restrictive. Okay, the movement of the animal is more limited. Okay, and since it's bigger, no, there may be more chances, okay, for complications. So mas madami yung risk. Okay? So bandages are also essential in post-operative care. So meaning they can ensure the comfort of the animals recovering from surgical procedures. So wound protection. Okay, so they act as a barrier, okay, for dirt, for bacteria, for debris. So thus they reduce the risk of infection. Okay, they also create an ideal um environment, no, where there is optimal level of moisture which can accelerate healing. Okay? So application of topical medication, as mentioned earlier, some bandages, yung first layer, the one that is in contact with the wound, can be enhanced by medications. Topical medications like topical antibiotics, no, neomycin or bacitracin. Okay, antiseptics, like povidone, or yung mga wound healing ointments no, na mentioned earlier, si silver sulfadiazine or honey-based dressings. Okay? So soft tissue compression, compression is important to reduce swelling and edema. So it also prevents excessive accumulation of fluids. Increased patient comfort and selective immobilization of soft tissues and joints. So for the common post-operative bandages, okay, so aside from the soft padded bandages that were mentioned earlier, we also have the Emmer's sling and the Velpo sling. So the Emmer's sling is this first picture. No, it's a specialized bandage designed to immobilize the hip joint, no, particularly after surgeries involving the hip, such as hip luxation or femoral head osteotomy. No, so it prevents excessive movement of these areas. No, so as shown here, the limb is flexed at the hip and at the stifle joints. Okay, elastic bandage or adhesive tape, okay, is wrapped around the metatarsus. Okay, and it also goes, no, it passes around the abdomen, okay, and in the groin area. Okay, so later on we'll see a video on how the Emmer sling is applied. And then this one is the Velpo sling. So it's used to immobilize the forelimb, okay, particularly after shoulder injuries or shoulder surgeries. So the limb is flexed against the chest. So in this case, the right forelimb is flexed against the chest to prevent movement of the shoulder and the elbow joints. No, so one possible complication for this, no, if the bandage, no, is excessively tight, no, it can cause discomfort, it can impair the circulation in the area, or it can even compromise the respiration of the animal, no, because of too much pressure on the chest. So this can also be applied in cats. Okay? So as mentioned earlier, okay, so we'll see how a Robert Jones bandage is applied. No, and in this video, no, so let's learn why, no, this particular practitioner, no, prefers other types of bandaging, no, aside from the Robert Jones bandage. And there have been modifications, no, merong mga tinatawag na modified Robert Jones bandage. Okay, but let's see first, no, how the um, classical, no, Robert Jones bandage is performed.
Hi, everyone. Dr. Sylvestre here. I want to talk to you about the Robert Jones bandage. So we're going to watch Jennifer apply a Robert Jones bandage to the hind limb of a dog. And once she's done her demonstration, I'm going to tell you why I no longer use the Robert Jones bandage and what I use instead. We're going to pretend that this golden retriever has a tibial fracture. Jen is showing the roll of cotton that we have. It's not a particularly thick one, so we don't need to split the thickness, but when they're really thick, we'll actually split the thickness because then it's easier to manage. She is going to cut this 1 pound package of cotton into approximately 30-inch strips. Again, only because it's easier to manage than trying to unravel that entire roll around the leg. So you can maneuver your cotton padding easier if you cut it up into strips. That's the first thing that makes this job easier. The next thing she's going to do is apply stirrups because the Robert Jones is a very heavy bandage and there's no way you're going to be able to see the toes without stirrups. Note that a Robert Jones is really, the intention is really there to immobilize a fracture and decrease the swelling. It is considered a temporary bandage. To do that, to immobilize the fracture so the patient is more comfortable and to reduce the swelling until the patient can either go to surgery or have a proper splint applied once the swelling has gone down, or a cast for that matter. But you don't want to apply your final cast or splint to a very inflamed, swollen leg because as the swelling goes down, your cast or splint will just loosen. So notice that she unraveled one roll around the distal portion of the limb, and because we're dealing with a tibial fracture, she needs to go above the stifle. Note here that she actually took one of her strips and cut it again, just ripped it into a smaller strip so she can totally get the limb covered from the toes to well above the fracture. To make the bandaging, the padding a bit more even, she's just applying more padding towards the distal limb. It's just about getting it even. The important thing is you want a lot of padding when you do a Robert Jones. Now she's applying her cling. She started kind of midway along the metatarsals, and because if you go too low, it just tends to slip down. So she started mid metatarsals and then went towards the toes and then started to really compress her way up. You have to apply a lot of tension in order to properly compress this bandage. The good news is that because of all the padding, there's no way that you can over compress a Robert Jones bandage. So it requires a lot of padding, but you can really pull hard. She is going to use approximately 4 cling rolls to create this bandage. So just to give you an idea of the amount of material, we started with 1 pound of cotton, and 4 cling rolls is what she's going to take to create her proper Robert Jones bandage. Now she's going back, starting at the toes and moving up. What she's trying to do is even out the tension that she's applied to her padding so that we're going to have a nice even tension throughout the bandage itself. Even tension is always the key to have a comfortable bandage. We're just going to watch her finish off with the cling, and before she applies her vet wrap, her protective layer, she is just going to ping her bandage just to make sure she feels she's got a nice sturdy, strong Robert Jones bandage. And there we go. It should sound like a pinging on a ripe watermelon is what the term that we use, but it gives you that kind of hollow sound. And then you know you've got a nice, strong, thick, well compressed. The sound comes from properly compressing all of this cast padding. And the final layer, after she's turned her stirrups over, is to apply the vet wrap. Once again, the vet wrap is the protective layer. It's just going to help hold the bandage together, keep it a little bit cleaner. It will offer a little bit of water resistance, and that's going to function for this dog. So once again, the Robert Jones here is a temporary measure for managing a fracture to help immobilize and reduce the swelling. Typically, it's used for tibial and radius ulna fractures. And once again, I much prefer it in the bigger dogs because in the smaller dogs, it's really quite a heavy bandage for these little guys. And there we go. Another beautiful bandage. I tend not to use the Robert Jones bandage for several reasons. One, it is a costly bandage to apply. It takes a lot of cotton. It is difficult to apply, and it's really heavy on a small dog. So I never use it on a smaller patient. If I use it, it will be on a larger dog. I tend to find it too heavy to apply simply to the metatarsals or metacarpals if we're dealing with a metacarpal metatarsal fracture. So I only use it for tibia or radius ulna. I much prefer to apply a splinted bandage rather than the Robert Jones. It's a little bit faster, it's easier. I don't have to stockpile a pound of cotton that I then have to tear up and cut up. And it takes a lot of pressure to really get it well compressed. So I do find that a splinted bandage is easier to apply, less expensive, and it will handle the swelling as well as stabilize your fracture.
Okay. So now let's watch how an Emersling. No, so again, this is a specialized bandage used to prevent weight bearing on the pelvic limb. No, after surgeries to reduce hip luxations, okay, or to maintain proper positioning of the femoral head, no, during healing. Okay, so this is just a short video.
Using 1 or 2-inch white adhesive tape, create a loop around the metatarsals with the tape poised to be pulled along the medial aspect of the limb. Avoid wrapping the tape around the paw itself, as you may cause constriction at the toes. Pull the tape up as high up into the groin area as possible with the stifle and hock flexed. Continue pulling the tape along the lateral aspect of the thigh, and then place a slight twist in it to bring it medial to the hock and back onto your initial starting point. Repeat the loop 1 or 2 more times until you are sure that the sling is securely positioned on the limb. An Emersling should never stay on for longer than 10 to 14 days.
Okay, so replay natin. No?
Using 1 or
the
2
pap.
inch white adhesive tape, create a loop around the metatarsals with the tape poised to be pulled along the medial aspect of the limb. Avoid wrapping the tape around the paw itself, as you may cause constriction at the toes. Pull the tape up as high up into the groin area as possible with the stifle and hock flexed. Continue pulling the tape along the lateral aspect of the thigh and then place a slight twist in it to bring it medial to the hock and back onto your initial starting point. Repeat the loop 1 or 2 more times until you are sure that the sling is securely positioned on the limb. An Emer sling should never stay on for longer than 10 to 14 days.
Okay. So for the duration of use, no, it's typically applied for 7, no, and it must not exceed, no, for 10 to 14 days, no, as mentioned in the video. And then lastly, no, for the Velpo sling, so this is to prevent weight bearing on the forelimb, no, and immobilize the shoulder joint. Okay. So it's also typically placed or applied for 7 to 14 days, no, depending on the severity of the injury. Okay, so let's watch how a Velpo sling is applied.
Hi everyone, Dr. Silvestre here. We're going to watch Jen apply a Velpo sling or bandage to this dog. She's starting with some cast padding just around the paw, going above the carpus, and then she is going to place that carpus in flexion. As you can appreciate, she is using the bandage material to hold the paw in a flexed position, to hold the carpus in a flexed position. And now with that carpus in the flexed position, she is going around the body. So what we're doing is we're holding the carpus, elbow, and shoulder in a flexed position, and we're tucking everything up against the body. The whole purpose of the Velpo sling is to prevent the dog from weight bearing on that forelimb. The Velpo is usually used for a problem either with the scapula or the shoulder. If you've got a problem with the humerus or further down, a spica splint is probably a better choice. But in this particular case, we want to prevent the patient from weight bearing on the limb. So she's continuing trying to secure this limb up against the dog's body. I'm going to tell you, slings just aren't the most comfortable thing. Having to keep all the joints in a flexed position, the patients tend not to like it. So you have to create something that is pretty secure. What you're not seeing, and I will show you a little bit later, is you're not seeing what's happening on the other side of the dog. Every time she goes to the dog's left side, she crisscrosses in front of the left limb and then behind the left limb. So we're going in front and behind the left limb. I will show you a picture of that in a moment. So she is just finishing up with the cling layer. She started with cast padding and now she's using cling, and you can see that my perfect little model here, Stella, is not enjoying this bandaging at all. So the cling has been applied, and now we're going to finish off with the vet wrap. Whenever you place a dog's limb or a patient's limb in a sling, you never want to have it on for more than 10 to 14 days, and I would encourage more towards the 10-day mark. These can be uncomfortable and they can cause problems having all those joints secured in flexed positions. Here's the picture of the other side of the bandage. You can see that all layers have crisscrossed both in front and behind the left limb. Having the Velpo sling go in front and behind the one standing limb helps to make it much more secure. If you only wrap around and keep on staying behind the opposite limb, the patient is more likely to wiggle their way out of it. Check out my video on applying a spica bandage to get a better idea on how to apply the bandaging material in front and behind the supporting limb.
Okay? So, I cannot highlight this more, no, but post-op assessment, no, and care is really important, no, not only for ensuring the successful healing of the fracture, but to prevent complications. Okay? And you must also provide clear and concise instructions to the owner to ensure proper at-home care. No? For example, if the pet or the animal, no, is not or will not be confined to the hospital or clinic, no, and you cannot monitor them personally. And it's also important to schedule no follow-up checkups. Okay, so you can also monitor no, the healing of the wound or to check for possible complications. No? So if the animal is also excessively licking, chewing, or trying to remove the bandage, there may be an underlying problem, no, like an allergic reaction, or if there's already bacterial growth, no, causing irritation in the area, especially if the bandage is accidentally splashed with water, no, or if they got wet, for example, from an outdoor activity, okay, etc. Okay, so we will end here. So do you have any questions? Meron po bang questions? Okay. So if none, I'll see you next week and have a safe evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Doc. Bye, Doc.
Sige, Doc. Bye,
Thank you,
Doc.
Doc.